Guys, actually, it shows you.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
I don't see anybody in Christiana. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 in Daniel. And Miss Linda, you're over there, right?
Yes.
Okay, everybody hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Well, hope you're ready for a short week of at least having to come into the classroom, because remember, we have the tests coming up this week as well, which you can do on your own, or you can come in and use one of the school computers or whatever you would like to do with that. So we will not be meeting Thursday, okay? So just a reminder, I'll try to send out an announcement because I see we have a couple of people missing. Hopefully they're going to come in late for us, but I'll try to just send out a reminder as well. Should y'all have any problems Thursday or whenever you're taking the test, because I imagine a lot of you won't actually take it at this time on Thursday, please just shoot me an email. I'm going to be out of town starting tomorrow morning through Friday with some other faculty members, so I will be checking my email though. So just, shoot me an email just like you normally have been doing if you need me for anything. I've had a couple of people on my online class section already take it, and I didn't hear any comments about anything strange happening with the test or anything, but you never know. Since Canvas is new, some kind of weird thing might happen, so don't panic if it does. All right, let's see if I can get our share screen up and take a look at our intro video from our author. We are doing chapter 4 today. It's an interesting chapter on the different types of diverse workers we have in the workplace now. It's mainly focusing in on cultural diversities because we have so much of a international setting that we are operating in these days, but we also are going to talk about some generational diversity and as well some gender diversity. So I hope it'll be enlightening to show you some of the differences between things. Some of them are kind of surprising. Some of them are not going to surprise you at all. So let's see what Dr. Carden has to say first off.
Today I'm going to talk about why and I'm going to issue a challenge. We live in a great time. It's never been easier to interact with members of other cultures, learning about their traditions and perspectives about life. For business, understanding other cultures is imperative for many business positions, and that's the topic of this chapter. The chapter will take you on a whirlwind tour of cultures around the world. You're introduced to key concepts, in particular, that are of great importance in your ability to work across cultures. The first is cultural intelligence, the second is cultural dimensions. Cultural intelligence is a similar concept to emotional intelligence. It deals with your basic abilities to understand and work with members of other cultures. Cultural dimensions are the underlying values and priorities that a cultural group holds. These cultural dimensions are rarely seen. They operate behind the scenes. But if you understand these underlying values and priorities in other cultures, you'll generally be able to understand, appreciate, and even adapt to the communication behaviors of members of other cultures. For this topic, I'd like to issue a challenge, and this is a fun challenge. Decide now to immerse yourself in a culture. Find a culture that's interesting to you to follow. Gain some friends around campus. Read an online newspaper about that culture. Best yet, travel and study abroad. One of the really defining moments in my life was my decision as a sophomore in college to go to Taiwan for English for a year. At the time, this is around 1992, it was becoming fairly apparent that China was becoming a player. I got this idea that I should learn Chinese, so I went to Taiwan to teach English. I got a motorcycle to ride around on. I enrolled in Chinese classes. Several times each week I went out to do karaoke. It was a great year, and it's impacted my career ever since. I've ended up working in China for about 3 years. I've done 1 or 2 business trips per year to China for the last few decades. And career-wise, it's made a big difference. My China background has led to a variety of promotions and other opportunities. As for my life, I've definitely been enriched with wonderful Chinese friends and wonderful. So this is the perfect time for you. It's a great time in life for you to immerse yourself in another culture and get out there. Best wishes.
All right. Okay, so you may be saying to yourself, this chapter's not going to make any difference to me. Here I am in Halifax County or Charlotte County or wherever you're sitting right now, and I'm never going to go to China, or I'm never going to go visit another country somewhere. Trust me, even if you never leave the United States, you will have to deal with countries in your workplace. Excuse me. I have physical noise going on. However, I will tell you all that if you do get a chance anywhere in your life to visit another country through school or any other opportunity you have, please take it. It'll be one of the most wonderful experiences you will ever go through, and not just from having a good time, but you will learn so much from it. I've not been to a lot of different countries, but I have been to enough to know that the world is not the same in places outside of Halifax County, which is where I'm from.
Yeah, this one is to Alberta campus. I'm gonna try to get somebody to get you up on the big screen because you're not.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get somebody over there in IT to help you, I think. So.
Okay.
I am fortunate that my parents love to travel, so I got to see a lot of the United States when I was growing up. But ever since then, I have been to I've been to France, I've been to England, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Canada. I have a lot of places on my bucket list that I want to make before it's all over with. So, and there's some places I don't want to go too. So there are some places out there you've probably noticed on the news that actually have some travel advisories on them right now. So I'm not trying to tell you all to go out there and get yourselves in any kind of danger or anything like that. But when I went to France and England, I went with a Southside College group as part of a tour with them. So if you're ever given an opportunity to do that, take advantage of it. It's really, really worth your while. Okay, so let me get back to the, see if I can get to the PowerPoints here. And as usual, we will struggle for a moment until I can get these to show on the screen. All right, I have a PowerPoint up here, but I have a feeling that when I click the slideshow, I'm going to lose you guys. Have you guys got PowerPoint? This is chapter 4 on it?
Yes, ma'am, so far.
So far, okay. All right, well, let's see how we go here. you'll notice that the chapter talks about something called cultural intelligence and cultural dimensions, as he mentioned in the video. But remember, this is a communication class, so we're going to specifically look at how we can communicate with other cultures in the workplace setting, basically. We'll talk about some very big differences in business etiquette. And then, as I said before, not only different countries, but we're going to look at generational differences and gender differences as well. So we're going to see that different countries view things like individualism and collectivism different. Some have defined hierarchies and others don't. Some look differently on assertiveness, and some have different orientations towards performance in the future and towards humans in general. Some are very opposed to anything that might be uncertain. So we're going to see there's some things that you just don't talk about in some countries, others that are very, very important that may not be important here in the United States, and how all of that can affect your communication in the workplace. So again, we've used this phrase cultural intelligence, also called CQ. That is a measure of your ability to work with and adapt to members of other cultures. Okay? And a culture, yes?
Scrolling across in here. I just got the plain.
Okay, all right, let me stop and see if I can try again with this. Let's see here. All right, I'm on a slide that says culture. What about you?
I have it now.
Okay, good, all right.
I don't have it in Alberta on Dr. Henderson.
Do you have anything in Alberta?
I did for a second and then it went away. I don't have you nor the PowerPoint on my board now.
Well, it ought to be the same thing in every place. Daniel, do y'all have the one that says culture on it, developing cultural intelligence?
Yes.
I don't know what's going on in Alberta then, because I shared it and everybody's got it, but you guys, you might need to get IT to come back in there.
Okay.
Okay, so again, culture itself is just shared values, rules, behavior, norms from a group of people who have a common history and a common communication system. We have cultural values within the United States. Clearly, communication in the South is different than it is in the North. The terminology we use is different. If you don't believe that, try going up to New York City and asking for a sweet tea and see what happens. So there are, within our own country, there are cultural differences. That doesn't mean that anybody's right and anybody's wrong. It just means we communicate differently. And we will have to work with those people in our business setting. So let's take a look here. I'm going to stop this share and go back to a video that I found that's very interesting. And let me get back here. That's going to address some of these cultural differences that are kind of interesting. It says, never do these things in foreign countries. That's the name of it.
Never do these things in foreign countries.
That's a little loud.
Countries, so many customs. Any gentler will agree this little proverb is true. In the age of globalization,
Oh, y'all don't have it.
going places has become an essential part of our life. We are all well aware of the fact that while visiting a foreign country, we must obey certain local.
It's gone completely now from 50.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting there.
To do so has given a rich ground for many jokes. If you don't want to be in one of those, or better yet, featured on YouTube as that crazy tourist, fined, or even arrested, pay attention to our list of do's and don'ts accurate in different countries of the world.
I think I have to actually turn the PowerPoint off for it to show. Now let me see if I can share. Oh, the share button went. There we go. All right, I apologize. We're going to get there though. How about now? Do y'all see the video now?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay.
Never do.
I talked about it.
Some countries, some will agree this little proverb is true. In the age of globalization, going places has become an essential part of our life. We are all well aware of the fact that while visiting a foreign country, we must obey certain local traditions and common rules. Failing to do so has given a rich ground for many jokes. If you don't want to be in one of those, or better yet, featured on YouTube as that crazy tourist, fined, or even arrested, pay attention to our list of do's and don'ts accurate in different countries of the world. Russia. The mysterious Russian soul has a lot of dark corners, and it may take years to discover and understand all of them. Let's start with one basic Russian don't. It does not matter if you want to surprise your Russian girlfriend, your business partner, or thank an old lady for her hospitality, never give an even number of flowers as a gift. Even numbers of flowers are for grieving and funerals. The florist might say something if you accidentally choose an even number of flowers, but it's better if you stay alert yourself just to be sure. Give a proper bouquet of 5, 7, 9, or more flowers depending on how much you are ready to spend, and the recipient will be more than happy. Chile. Matters matter more to the people of Chile than to other South Americans. It is extremely important not to eat anything with your fingers. Even the smallest French fry must be stabbed with a fork. Licking your fingers or utensils is also a no-go. Word to the wise, if you are planning a trip to Chile, take your time to study some etiquette rules to know your salad fork from your fish fork. Singapore. Clean streets and low crime rate make Singapore famous worldwide as the fine city, and not because it is so beautiful. Remember the second meaning of the word fine? This is the case. Some little crimes you might get fined for are easy to understand. Others will leave you surprised and much less wealthy. Chewing gum, for example, is banned in Singapore, so you'd better leave it home before getting on the phone. If you break the gum rule for the first time, you may be fined for up to $1,000. It is also prohibited to eat birds, spit, and throw any trash onto the street, or eat on public transportation. India. When in India, you have to keep your private life to yourself and your emotions under control. No matter how much you want to show affection to your special someone, never kiss them in public. This in particular can get you put in jail. No physical contact with people of the opposite sex is allowed in public. Japan. Similar to India, public demonstration of affection is not acceptable in Japan. Remember, there is no hugging, or even worse, kissing in public. Unlike in so many other countries, tipping is not a thing in Japan. Tips are not expected, so don't be surprised if you try tipping someone and they turn it down. A brilliant thing to do is, on the same side, would be just to do what the locals do. Mexico. Are you planning a trip to Mexico? A good piece of advice would be to stay as thick-skinned as possible, since Mexicans love making jokes and never miss a chance to do so. Don't take things too personally. No one means to hurt you, it is just the way they are. Be brave and adventurous. Local people will highly appreciate your attempts at speaking the language or experiencing their culture. Try dancing their national dance, love the local food, or wear a sombrero. There are many ways to show you care and respect. New Zealand. Remember the difference between Aussies and Kiwis. Never mix them up. In case you didn't know, the Aussies stand for Australians and the Kiwis for New Zealanders. Just to make it clear, New Zealanders are friendly and fun-loving people. However, there are things no one would ever joke about. Rugby, Lord of the Rings, and Her Majesty the Queen of the United Kingdom are the topics to avoid when trying to make a funny joke. Don't be surprised if you see a lot of barefoot people. Walking to places with no shoes on provides good massage to your feet and is a cultural thing. Norway. When in Norway, don't ask questions concerning church. This may be taken for disrespect. Many people here don't attend church, and those who do will want to keep it to themselves. Do not expect any formalities. There will be no Mr. or Miss something. People prefer to talk informally and refer to each other by their first names. Turkey. An essential thing to remember before going to Turkey is not to play with the OK sign. It might seem like a sign of approval to you, but is considered an obscene gesture to Turks. Try not to drink too much. Being drunk in public is considered shameful here. So don't be surprised, it might be hard to find booze, and if you manage to do it, don't get wasted on it. If you take out a toothpick at a public place or blow your nose, expect surprise and even angry looks. Don't do it in public. Keep it private. United Kingdom. British people like their pudding fresh and their queues well organized. Don't jump the queue, or expect to be judged by the locals. That extra minute you might spare can cost you a room full of contempt. Don't ask people how much they earn. This is not a good topic for discussion. Talk about the weather, cricket, or Her Majesty's new hat. Just do not start the money talk. Don't invite random people over. Remember, your house is your castle, and only your close friends should be welcome there. Ireland. Do not try to play it cool and sound like Irishmen. For Irish people, there is no such thing as an Irish accent. They recognize and divide accents depending on the region of Ireland they come from. Don't be cheap. It is not a good idea to start a night of bar hopping if you don't have enough money to buy your beers. Germany. Don't ever use Nazi greeting gestures. If you do, your journey to Germany might end sooner than you planned. Every year, tourists get arrested and sent back home for this. Don't stare at people. Germans might look very attractive, but try to resist the temptation of staring at clouds on the metro. Only poorly educated and crazy people do that here. Don't try to look overly friendly. It takes a good amount of time, sometimes months, for a German to get used to new people and call them friends. Don't congratulate anyone on his or her birthday before the day itself. Germans are very superstitious when it comes to their birthdays. They believe it is a bad sign to hear happy birthday before the special date and can even cause death. Kenya. Don't show disrespect for religion. No matter what their religions may be, Kenyans are very devout. Be patient. 5 minutes do not necessarily mean 5 minutes, and that bus schedule you're looking at might not be very accurate. In fact, nothing ever happens here according to schedule. Learn to go with the flow. Don't talk about sex in mixed groups of friends. This topic is a taboo. People might get so offended they won't want you in their group after that. Don't call anyone by his or her name if the person hasn't referred to you this way. Miss, Mrs., Mr., Doctor is what is expected of you. If you want to call someone whose name you don't know, you can just go with Madam or Sir. Malaysia. Never touch anyone's head. For Malaysians, this is the home of the soul and the most sacred part of the body. Keep yourself from running your fingers through people's hair, especially babies. Korea. If you want to have good manners in Korea, use 2 hands when handing over money. When you pay for things, pass on your cash or credit card with both hands. It's a sign of respect. Do you know any other things that are prohibited in foreign countries? Share them in the comments below. Don't forget to give us thumbs up and click subscribe to join us on the bright side of life.
Okay, some interesting things. Anybody surprised by any of those? It's just differences is all that it is. Just totally differences. So just have to be respectful of other people's values and norms. We have gotten so much business that's now handled throughout a lot of countries. You might even expect like franchises like McDonald's to have the same thing from one country to the next, but I can assure you if you go to McDonald's in France, you will not be getting the same thing you get at a McDonald's here in the United States. The food is different, the safety and health regulations are different. You know how here in the United States, hamburgers that sit for a certain length of time under the heat lamps, they actually have to throw them away. For health regulations, they do not have that in France. They can sit there all day long and they'll still serve them to you. So it's just differences. In Japan, the people are typically shorter than they are in the United States. If you go to a McDonald's in Japan, their tables and their bar stools are shorter to the ground to accommodate the people there. So just be aware and be careful doing some of the things that you take as normal if you do go to any of those countries. And of course, if you're interacting with any of those foreign countries in a business relationship, you want to respect anything that they may have, they do, or they, you might think be a little bit strange. But some of them you wouldn't know. I mean, how about the passing the money with both hands? I mean, I wouldn't know that. And I watched several of these videos before I picked one that kind of showed a lot of different countries for you, but some of the things were just amazingly different. So if you ever get bored and want to go to YouTube and just type in cultural differences, and you will just be amazed by some of the things that are different from one country to the next. All right, let me see if I can get back to the PowerPoints, which is always my problem here. So let me go back and see if I can get the PowerPoint back up and get it into the right place. All right, you should have a table 4.2, cultural intelligence in the workplace, show up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, now let's see if it'll move forward as we go, but let's take a look at this one first. I think we kind of touched upon all of these things that are different from different cultures, the respect, recognition, appreciation differences. We are suggesting to have a high CQ or cultural intelligence, that you are curious about other cultures and show interest in them, but try not to stereotype them. Some of the things that we saw today might have been stereotypes involving some of these other countries, but try not to do that. Conceptions of time, as mentioned there in one of the countries, are completely different. I know that if any of you have been to any of the Caribbean islands, you realize that their notion of being on time is very different than ours. There's, we say we're running on Bahama time or something like that, because they go when they want to go. They're very, very patient people. Of course, managing language differences will help you. There's times, of course, you're not expected to learn every single language there is out there, but there are tools to help you to be able to communicate in different languages now. Got to establish trust. That's a really tough one, because many countries, people are naturally distrustful of others. So build cooperation and innovation culture along with your other workers as well. So respect and recognition, that means that you're going to hold whatever their values are as legitimate. Again, there's no right and wrong. Okay, y'all slides going forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. All right, so diversity is just the presence of many cultural groups in the workplace. We have mentioned diversity before in the workplace in some of our previous chapters, but understand that now we're broadening to be cultural diversity, and having more different types of culture interact in the workplace usually results in higher performance. You have different viewpoints, different ideas come out when you have a lot of different cultures available. If at all possible, try to study abroad and learn a language. One of the greatest things I regret is that I never became completely fluent in any language other than English. Even though I took French for 4 years, I can read French, but I can't really communicate in it. When someone speaks French to me, it's too fast, and I can't possibly translate it. I never got to that point where it became a second language for me. I really have to immerse yourself in a culture to do that. If you see international students, and we do occasionally have some at Southside, try to develop friendships with them to learn about their culture. Just pick a country that you're interested in and take some initiative to learn as much as you can about it. You can watch films and documentaries about the culture. You can follow the business culture of those countries. Take courses, attend events dealing with those cultures, and make friends with people, even communicate with them online if you can't communicate with them one-on-one. Again, make sure you're not stereotyping. Projected cognitive similarity is the tendency to assume that everybody in the group has the same norms and values. So don't let that overcome you, even though we have shown some stereotypical things in the videos there. Try not to do that. Out-group homogeneity effect is the tendency to think members of other groups are all the same. All French people are such and such. All British people are such and such. That is out-group homogeneity effect. And again, we want to avoid that. But clearly there are differences. Of course, people in other countries think that we as Americans have certain characteristics. So this is what other cultures think about Americans, okay? 77% in Canada think Americans are hardworking. But over any of the gray ones, those are negative things. They assume that we're not very honest, we are greedy, and we are rude. China doesn't think we're very hardworking, honest, or we are very greedy, okay? France has a pretty good feeling for us in most cases. So does Germany and India. But you see some of these other countries here, this greedy shows up a lot, doesn't it? Okay, a lot of countries perceive us as being greedy and not truly honest. So if you're dealing with someone from Russia, you can pretty much expect that person to think that you're going to be looking out for yourself, probably greedy. And I think that's because they view us as a capitalist nation, and they have not yet come to see that capitalism is a beneficial type thing for a country. So again, different viewpoints. So if you have a high CQ or high cultural intelligence, you will show patience. You will understand that things will take longer when you work across cultures because there's time needed to actually understand each other. And of course, one of the biggest things is the language differences. Try not to judge people that have limited communication proficiency. Just because they don't speak your language doesn't mean that they are unintelligent by any means. Slow down in your speaking, speak clearly, avoid slang and jargon. I remember way back in high school, we had a foreign student, it's an exchange student, come and he was carrying on a conversation with a girl, and he could actually speak the English language fairly well, but she used the phrase "how come" instead of "why," and that just threw him for a loop. He had no idea what that meant. That, you know, just a simple jargon type term that we use. Let them have time to express themselves, and if you do need to, get an interpreter, someone who speaks both languages. Nowadays, there's a lot of computer type interpreters. I had, when I was teaching for Longwood, a class one time, I had several Chinese students, and they actually had computerized translators that they would use, and they had permission to use them on a test because they could not understand all the language that we had, so they would translate back and forth between Chinese and American when they were taking tests. But most of them really, really wanted to learn the language, so they tried to avoid using that as much as possible. All right, cultural dimensions. That's just talking about sets of related norms and values. These are some of the things that you see, dimensions that you see in different countries. Some of them are like opposites of each other, like individualism and collectivism, egalitarianism and hierarchy. Others are just the degree to which they are performance-oriented or future-oriented, or how assertive they are, and so on. So we're going to take a look at some charts that show you by country how some of these differ. Individualism is the thought that says independence is more desired than interdependence. Okay, so think about yourself first rather than collective goals, rather than the group goals. Okay, and here is collectivism in society versus individualism. U.S. is about fourth from the bottom there, and you can see that we are more individualistic. We think more about our own independence rather than group goals, whereas you get on up to China, that furthest up there towards collectivism, they tend to try to do everything looking at the group as a whole. And of course, opposite of that, collectivism is the mindset that says interdependence or working together is higher than independence. So Japan is much more of a collective society. US is kind of falling right there in the middle as well. So what's the difference here? Okay, if you are an individualistic society, if you're talking with someone that comes from that type of country, you want to focus in on individual rewards and goals, as opposed to someone from a high collectivism society. You want to focus on group rewards and goals. Again, think about it. This is how you are communicating with them. If it's an individualistic society, again, the US scores higher on individualism. You want to emphasize opportunities and choices for those people rather than duties and obligations. Less time in group decision making if it's an individualistic type culture, more time in group decision making and high collectivism. If you're individualistic, don't socialize much outside of work. But if it's a group type collectivism society, socialize frequently outside of work. Okay, so you can kind of get the gist of the focus on the individual versus the focus on the group in all of these. Okay, the other two opposites here are egalitarianism and hierarchy. In egalitarian cultures, people distribute and share power evenly. Egalitarian, equal, if you want to think of that. There's not much differences in statuses. Nobody has special privileges just because they have higher authority, as opposed to the hierarchical cultures where different groups have special privileges and opportunities. I tend to think of a hierarchy society being like the United Kingdom. You know, clearly the king and the queen have special privileges above and beyond the common person. Okay, USA is down here clearly an egalitarianism as compared to other countries where no one group has special privileges over anyone else. But if you are operating in the US versus the United Kingdom, for instance, your decision making is more decentralized. So people spread out throughout the organization are making decisions. Whereas in the United Kingdom, decisions are made centralized. Protocol is not as important. It's usually just in unusual formal business situations in the United States, but protocol is very important in the United Kingdom. People sit where they're supposed to sit, they use their titles, and so on. In the US, we speak more openly with our leaders, even if we're disagreeing with them. In the United Kingdom, people will defer to the leaders during a disagreement. They won't sit there and argue with them. In the United States, subordinates don't take responsibility for the mistakes of their leaders, okay? But in the United Kingdom, they would be glad to take the blame to save their leaders. We approach our leaders directly. In the United Kingdom, they approach leaders by going through an intermediary. All right, performance-oriented countries or cultures. This is the type of culture that encourages and rewards innovation, high standards, and performance improvement. Just like it says, it's oriented towards you performing, okay? Hong Kong, very high up there, US fourth down the list. The lowest would be Italy, listed there. So we as the U.S. are pretty moderately high, focusing on our high performance. All right, so we're going to look at the results more than the relationships we have. We want to have measurable goals and objectives. We look at feedback being essential. We talk about financial data a lot. That's a measure of performance. Hold individuals accountable, and we expect urgency in our communications. On the other hand, the other types of low performance orientations will look at relationships over results. They're more casual, and their feedback is considered to be judgmental and uncomfortable, not something to help you improve things. They don't look at financial incentives often. They consider that to be inappropriate. Loyalty and sympathy are very highly valued, and they don't view time as being as exact as we do. Future-oriented type countries, that's the cultures that are willing to sacrifice the current wants in order to get future needs. All right, here we are, what, 5th on the list there? The Netherlands and Germany, very willing to give up their current desires in order to look towards the future. Italy, way down on the end down there. Not future-oriented at all. So if you're dealing with a culture that is high future-oriented, you want to look at the control and planning. You want to talk about long-term strategies. You want to be flexible, have long-term rewards, visionary approaches, whereas the low future orientation is going to focus on what the current problems are. They're rarely going to talk about long-term strategies. They'll talk about short-term rewards, and they'll prioritize things in order to determine what they're going to be tackling. Assertiveness, that's with your level of confrontation and directness. How much of that is considered to be appropriate? All right, where is the United States? Third from highly assertive. Okay, so we do expect direct language and confrontation. Japan, on the other end, very low assertive. They want you to hold back any type of expression of your thoughts and feelings. So in the United States, silence makes us uncomfortable. Okay, we show our emotions. We use dominant language, but in Japan, silence is considered to be respectful. And again, they don't show their emotions. They use tender and pleasant language in Japan. I was watching one video earlier of a United States citizen who went over to Japan and gave a presentation, a short presentation. And you know how we at the end typically ask for questions. You have any questions? And if you do, you raise your hand or you shout out your question or whatever. At the end of her first presentation, she said no one had any questions at all. And she couldn't figure out why, but the fellow who was with her, who was actually had spent time in Japan, said, let me tackle this. And he looked around the room and said, I think there are some questions. And he looked for the people who were making direct eye contact. And he called on those people and they said, yes, they had questions. Okay, so silence is more respectful in that type of culture. All right, humane orientation is the degree that you encourage fairness, friendliness, caring, kindness. Okay, third from the top for the U.S. Still not a very strong score there. Surprising? No, that Germany has low humane orientation. They're not too worried about being kind to you. Okay, so cultures that have high humane orientation, you want to welcome them. Let them know you're interested in them. Their feelings are critical. Need to volunteer to help people. Smile a lot. Germany, on the other hand, you don't talk about your feelings. If somebody asks you, you can help, but you wouldn't volunteer to help. And you don't want to smile and show any nonverbal signs of welcome. That's considered a no-no. Uncertainty avoidance, that's how culture members feel when things are uncertain or surprising, okay, whether they avoid them or not, okay. And the list there shows Germany at the top, USA third from the bottom. Not as long a list. They must not have been able to get data for some of the countries there. But in high UA cultures, people feel uncomfortable with uncertainty. They want things to be very orderly. And I would say that's probably our stereotypical thoughts about Germans. But in low uncertainty avoidance countries, uncertainty does not bother the members very much. All right, so in Germany, you want all your things to be in legal contracts, keep good records, document all your meetings and so on. Low uncertainty, you can be much less stringent about your communications and formalizations there. Okay, so that takes a look at cultural differences. Let's take our break. We'll come back and finish up the chapter by looking at differences between genders and between generations, okay? So I have 10 till 3. Let's go to about 15 minutes, so about 5 after 3 we'll come back and we'll pick up with some gender differences, okay? And I have lost the Christiana. No, I've lost Daniel. Go ahead and start the recording again. Let me ask y'all this. Do y'all think men and women are the same?
No.
Definitely not. All right, physically not, for sure, okay? But there's a lot of things in our brains that are different between men and women. So I'm going to show you all a video that actually explains some of those differences, and it directly relates it to how we deal with each other in the workplace, because we know for a fact we're going to have to deal with people of other genders in the workplace, even if you don't think you'll be going to another country or dealing with anyone from another country. We definitely have gender differences you're going to have to deal with. So let me share that for you. Okay, let's see here. This one. Taking a little while up here. Go.
Oh, sorry.
All right, let's look at the gender one then, and we'll look at the one dealing with the different generations here.
Have you ever worked with someone of the opposite sex and wondered, what on earth are they thinking? It turns out that men and women's brains work very differently. And if you know these differences, you can hack them. My name is Vanessa Van Edwards, and I'm lead investigator at the Science of People, a human behavior research lab. In this video, I'm going to share some fascinating facts about the authors Barbara Andrews and Richard Nesbitt wrote a fascinating book called Results at the Top, using gender intelligence to create breakthrough growth. And they found that men and women actually think differently. Men tend to be more factual with their thought and actions, and
Just want to make sure everybody's looking at the video.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, good. Last time I did a video, we waited till the end, and I wanted to make sure everybody had it
women
this time.
tend to be more intuitive. Where do you fall on this diagram? Do you like logic, facts, and numbers? Or do you like emotions, feelings, and intuition? A lot of this has to do with how your brain processes. For example, here are two scans of a man and woman's brains at rest. Notice how a woman's brain is far more active at rest. This is why women tend to want to talk after a hard day to process, while men want to process in solitude. Women want to talk it out, process, and explore. Men want to give their brain time to explore, unwind, and decide what to do next. Neither of these approaches are right or wrong, but they are different. Why women remember everything. Why do women remember everything? This is because women have a larger hippocampus. This is where we store memory, and it's why women can recall every single word of an argument 5 years ago. Let's look at some of the other facts that might help you understand your opposite gendered colleague, partner, or friend. Special note, the facts below are tendencies, not rules. There are always exceptions to finding, but they do help us understand how each gender tends to think, behave, and act. Fascinating fact number 1, details, details, details. Have you ever noticed that men and women typically share and present differently in meetings? This might have to do with the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, or PFC, this is the decision center of the brain that controls social behavior, judgment, and consequential thinking. Some interesting differences between men and women and their PFC. Women develop their PFCs at a younger age, which is why they take less risks as teenagers than males of the same age. Women also have a larger PFC. Men have a larger amygdala, which means men can have more processing power for threats, while women have more processing power for detail. I had a few major aha moments while thinking about this fact. First, women will often include more details in their decision making, and they'll verbalize those details during meetings or in conversations. This is often misinterpreted by males to mean that women's deliberations take more time. But this is actually only a difference in processing. So ladies, you like to verbalize, and that's okay. Men, be patient while your ladies verbalize. That's how they are wired. Second, men and women problem solve differently. Men tend to define and clarify a problem, and then begin by eliminating and isolating issues. Women, on the other hand, will often define a problem in broader terms and allow for a wider range of potential factors before going into solutions. This is why women want to talk out problems and men want to dive right into solving them. So men, process with a woman first, then go into solutions. Ladies, if you're with more men, quickly process or do it on your own and then move into solution mode. Fascinating fact number 2, worry word. Do you know a woman who worries a lot? Don't blame her. It's just her brain. This all comes down to the worry center of the brain, anterior cortex, where people process emotions, arrange memories, and ruminate, also known as the worrywart center of the brain. Some interesting differences between men and women's anterior cortex. Women have a larger anterior cortex, which means they spend more time ruminating, trying to process emotions, and, well, worrying. Women have higher rates of anxiety than men. Researchers think this might come down to the highly sensitized female anterior cortex. Here is the aha moment I had while looking at this class. In meetings, women are far more likely than men to read facial expressions of people around them, take the emotional temperature of the room, and be sensitive to people's feelings. This can benefit them. They might notice more, but it also could hinder them. They notice too much. In other words, a woman's heightened sensitivity is a gift and a curse. A woman's anterior cortex can give her great awareness and insight, but also can bog her down with decisions and distract her from effectiveness. To women who worry, be patient with yourself. Use it as a gift. To men around worrying women, be patient with them and find a way to leverage it. This also affects men and women in conflict. Men tend to depersonalize and externalize issues or problems, giving them time to think through solutions, often in solitude. Women tend to personalize problems and are more inclined to want to talk through the issue to reach understanding. I know for a fact that this fact gave my wonderful hubby an aha moment. Babe, this is why I constantly take things personally and want to talk them through for hours. It's not my fault, it's just my brain. Fascinating fact number 3, webs versus lines. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. The right brain, which uses more creative and intuitive thought, and the left brain, which is for linear and logical thinking. They are connected by something called corpus callosum, a thick bundle of nerves connecting the right and left side of the brain. Some interesting differences between men and women. Women's corpus callosum is 25% larger than men's. This means that women tend to bounce back and forth between feelings and facts very easily. Men like to think in steps, processing one fact at a time. In other words, men think in straight lines, whereas women think in webs, constantly connecting ideas. This gave me a huge aha moment. Men's linear thinking is not better or worse than women's web-like thinking, but it is extremely helpful to know. Men are exceptionally good at focusing, getting rid of extraneous data, and pushing full steam ahead. Women are incredibly good at holistic thinking, contextualizing ideas, and drawing new connections and factors. We should leverage these differences with people in our lives. Need help with the big picture? Ask a woman to brainstorm. Need help setting up a system? Ask a male colleague for help. Remember, there are some women who are still great at systems and some men who are great at brainstorming. This is just some of our brain's tendencies that we can leverage. Fascinating fact number 4, success and failure. Testosterone is the principal male hormone. Men have way more of it than women, but women have testosterone too. In fact, the way testosterone acts in the body points to some interesting gender differences. Some interesting differences between men and women. Men produce 20 to 30 times more testosterone than women. Men need to replenish their testosterone levels to feel successful and feel terrible when their testosterone levels are low. Although women and men both have testosterone, it's processed differently in stress responses. Here's the big aha moment. When men feel successful, they have lots of testosterone. When they experience a setback, they lose testosterone. This means that they need time to replenish their stores after a loss or failure. This is why men tend to need space after a long, hard day. Unlike women, men often do not immediately seek out social support or need to verbalize their thoughts. Here's what researchers Annis and Nesbitt had to say about this. Quote, this dynamic also defines some of the reason why men will often ignore a difficult problem. Avoiding the issue or shutting down gives them time to think through the issue, oftentimes in solitude. This allows men to recoup and replenish their testosterone levels and gain the mental strength and drive to tackle the issue. Women might misinterpret a man's shutting down as avoidance or standoffishness, but actually they're getting their chemistry right so they can process. Men, give yourself time to rebound after a setback. Women, be patient with men who need some time to process. Fascinating fact number 5, effectiveness. Oxytocin is the chemical that helps us feel social attachment. It's incredibly important for our social interactions. Both men and women produce and need it to connect. A lot of oxytocin means there is more trust and rapport between people. Some interesting differences between men and women. In both men and women, oxytocin reduces blood pressure and feelings of fear. In women, oxytocin can rise during a relaxing conversation and fall in response to feeling ignored or abandoned. Men also need oxytocin to lower their stress levels. However, too much oxytocin in men actually reduces testosterone levels and then increases their stress. Wait, what? Here's the aha moment. Men need a balance of oxytocin. If they've had a stressful conversation, they often seek solitude or time alone to replenish and regroup. This means, ladies, never force a man to talk it out if he's not ready. On the other hand, men can help a woman who is feeling stressed by talking her through the difficulty and letting her process her emotions. Fascinating fact number 6, stress response. As humans, we produce cortisol when we are stressed. This is natural and good for us. Cortisol helps stabilize glucose levels and regulates metabolism and blood pressure. But too much cortisol for too long is bad for the body. In fact, too much cortisol can slow down cognitive performance and make it hard to think clearly. Some interesting differences between men and women. Studies have shown that women's cortisol levels are 2 times higher than men at work. Women's cortisol levels are 4 times higher than men's at home. When women are not able to process or collaborate with others, they do not produce enough oxytocin. This makes it difficult for them to recover from stress. Here's a big idea for this fast. Women get into bad stress cycles where they cannot recover. Quote, when women aren't able to collaborate at work, or there's not enough time to attend to personal life events and needs, their stress and anxiety will increase beyond their ability to relax and collect themselves. That increase in stress is brought on by the rush of cortisol that stimulates the production of testosterone in women's systems and inhibits their ability to produce oxytocin, thereby perpetuating the stress cycle. Remember that women recover differently than men, but both genders need to have time to recoup after a cortisol-inducing event. Men need time to help them process. Women need someone to help them process. Just knowing these facts can help you help the people in your life and yourself. My goal with this video is to help you feel better about our gender differences. They are good. We have to have different strengths and weaknesses on a team, in a partnership, or in a friendship. They also help us understand and predict the behavior in our fellow human beings. Remember, we are wired differently, and that's great. On a team with both men and women, send this around or watch together.
Okay, so interesting, huh? We've got physical differences that make us who we are. So some of the things that you may have noticed differently in your work or in your personal lives, you may actually now say, well, I know, that's my brain. I'm just built differently. Just built differently. She was very careful to say neither is right or wrong. What we need to do is just recognize the differences and use both to make the work more productive. So, I'm not asking you all to know the parts of the brain or anything like that, but I do want you all to understand that the genders do react differently, and a lot of it is because of physical differences. Just totally physical differences that have been proven by research. I mean, so if you think a woman is extremely a worrywart, or you're a woman and you think a man refuses to communicate, know that those are physical things going on with those people that cause them to behave that way, and we are different. We're totally different. So embrace that difference in the work world. Let's see if I can get back to our PowerPoint so that I don't think we really need to go through the gender differences one. Let's see if I can find it here. Well, I think there are some etiquette differences you can look at on your PowerPoints, but I wanted to get to the generational differences. Let's see. Rather than showing the whole PowerPoint information, can you all see that workplace across generations slide there?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. These days we have, in most business organizations, at least 4 of these generations working together. We're running out of traditionalists. Those are the people born between 1925 and 1945. Most of those have reached retirement age, and you may find a few of those left in the workplace. But we still have many boomers around, although a lot of boomers are reaching retirement age. Boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. I'm a baby boomer, so-called because that's right after the war, and there was a huge growth in the population during that time period. Gen X people are born between 1965 and 1981. So very possible that there are a lot of Gen Xers in your workplace. And Gen Ys. Gen Ys are born between 81 and 99. And then anyone born in 2000 or after is a Gen Z type generation. So you can find yourself somewhere along those lines. Like I said, I'm a boomer. And one of the big things you should be aware of is, again, that many of these boomers are approaching retirement age. So we're looking for workforce to take all those retirement slots that are out there. Going to be the population during the boomer period was tremendous. So there's a lot of room for these younger generations to move in and take these slots. So again, that looks like where the bulk of the people are in that boomer, Gen X, Gen Y situation, and then a few folks in Gen Z are now in the workplace. Now, why does that matter? Because each of these generations does have different value and different outlooks on things, totally different. So I did find a video that talks about, it's actually a company that has 4 generations working there. But here, before we do that, I just want you to take a look at the tips for working with different generations. Focus on the people and their goals. Recognize that there are similarities, but there also are differences. And pay attention to their different approaches in communication. Couple of areas where there are huge differences are in the formality and in the attire, the dress, that type of thing. So let me stop this one and go to the last video that I have for you all. Maybe you'll see yourself in some of these.
Have you ever worked with someone of the opposite sex?
Oh, that's the wrong one.
Have you ever worked with someone of the opposite sex?
Sorry about that.
What on earth are they thinking?
I hit the wrong
It
one.
turns out that men and women's brains work very differently.
I had them in a different order than the book did. I think I will swap those so they don't confuse you. There we go. Oh, I got to get the share on.
Millennial.
Gen X.
Boomer.
Traditionalist.
It's like my kids, if they forget the phone, it's like they're gonna die.
My phone doesn't leave like a 6-inch radius from me. They're like, oh, these kids with their tech gadgets, you know, and all we had is newspapers and advocates.
He just showed us the different generations because he couldn't remember.
That is definitely my generation. I like that.
I prefer a quick, right to the point answer, no back and forth email. I have a hard time adapting to sending emails. So sometimes my bosses get a little frustrated, but I don't want to go. I check social media probably like 50 or 60 times a day.
I mean, that's pretty serious, but yes, I would.
The ones that are in Gen X and then the baby boomers, they're a little bit more, don't want to be in the spotlight, where millennials like to be praised and they like that constant feedback.
I don't know about like not reading it entirely, but like definitely that's.
Skimming is great.
You're saying that wasted 4 hours.
Multiple people, multiple generations looking at the same problem.
That's 4 different answers that may answer the same question, but in a different style.
Now you have so many new things to learn, like let's move on to the next thing.
It gave me a lot of thought into the different generations that work here. I mean, we need each other.
Okay, very short and sweet, but again, clearly advocating that no one's right, no one's wrong, we're just different. And we view things differently. And I mean, obviously the technology differences, the connection to those cell phones, you know, those are things that are very much indicative of the younger generations from the newer ones, but the older ones. The newer generations seem to don't want to accept some of the needs of the older generations as well. So just remember again, no one is right, no one is wrong. If we all work together, we have more of all the ideas and all the thoughts to help us pull together. How many, I told y'all I'm a baby boomer. Do we have any millennials in here? Gen X's? Okay, Gen Y's? Any Gen Z's? Got any babies in here?
I'm a Gen Z.
You're Gen Z? Okay, all right, very good. Maybe you saw yourself in some of those videos on how you feel about things, but there's some tremendously funny videos out there about interviews with Gen Z type people. And if I can find one real quick, I'm going to show it to you because let me see if I can get my hands on one. Oops, if I can type. Let's see. Okay. Let's look at this one. Let's see if I can share this.
Amy, it says you are trained in technology. That's very good. Are you adept at Excel?
No,
PowerPoint,
no,
publisher.
not really.
Exactly in what area of technology are you proficient?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Twitter, you know the big ones.
I'm surprised you didn't say Facebook.
That's for old people, like my parents. That's funny.
Well, Amy, when you're working for me, you have to have those kind of research skills because I'll send you things to go through and get and send them to me. So you got to be really good at that.
For stuff like that, no problem. I'll just ask Siri.
You know, just ask Siri.
You know, Siri tell me this, Siri find me that. We're all good at getting you the answers.
Tell Siri, I want you ready to go at 8 sharp each and every morning.
I don't understand
What don't you understand?
what you just said.
You don't understand. You ready to go?
No. You said 8, right?
Yes.
8 like in the morning, 8?
Yes, in the morning.
Yeah. That kind of doesn't work for me. Who gets up at 8?
I do.
I Skype with my French boyfriend in Paris until like 3 in the morning. I don't even get to Starbucks until like 10, where I order my grande chai tea latte, 3 pumpkin milk, light water, 2% foam, extra hot, but not too hot. So if it's okay, I work best in the morning at 10:45.
Wow. Amy, I don't think we're going to be a good fit.
Why are you so negative? I can sense your hostilities, and right now I am not feeling very safe. I've been here for over 5 minutes, and the only nice thing you have said to me was nice resume, which I typed all night for this meeting with you. You've given me no guidance, no validation, no encouragement, no supervision. Is there an HR director somewhere?
HR director?
Yes, I need to speak to someone. I may have to take off today as a mental health day.
Take today off. Amy, look, you don't work here.
Are you firing me?
Okay, yes.
Okay, that is a humorous look, but there's so much truth in that from both sides. So,
Oh, Marathon Industries, give me a breakdown.
It's a B2B company that provides cloud.
oops, I think I still have him going. Let me,
That's the market research.
What?
okay. All right, so clearly some Gen X's are going to have to adapt to some things in the workplace, and clearly some of the baby boomers or traditionalists are going to have to adapt to the new generations as well. They both have positive things to bring, but there's a big distance between the two, a very big distance. So just be aware of that. And I don't advise going into an interview like that girl did, if I were you all. So, but notice some of the characteristics: constantly wanting validation, feedback, that kind of thing. That's something that us baby boomer parents are guilty of instilling in our children, and now that's showing up in the workplace as well in their characteristics. So again, I am not going to go through all of those PowerPoint slides. I'm just going to zoom down to the chapter takeaways just to make sure y'all are okay. There's a number of slides in there. Let's see, find the takeaway slide there. Well, there's the chapter takeaways. Again, understand the term cultural intelligence, understand the different cultural dimensions and how different countries fall on those scales between the two. Look at business etiquette, things that you can and can't talk about. And we watched a video on that. There's more details on the slides there. And how this can affect our communication. So I'm, again, one-on-one with those slides, not necessarily. I think we did enough with the videos. So now let me just remind you that Thursday, we will not be meeting. You will be testing between now and midnight Sunday. Okay, midnight Sunday, it's got to be in by then. Can't start it at midnight because it's going to take you a while to get it done. Again, you may use your book, you may use your notes, but they have to be physically present for you to use them. Okay, you cannot jump back and forth from module to module to find the PowerPoints or anything like that. You got to have your hands on them. Does not need to be proctored this time or anything like that. You just do it on your own. There's no password with it. It is found in your, let's see here, this. In your module 3, it's actually there, if I can get to it. Oh, I think I've already closed out, but just look at module 3. There is still one homework, graded homework for this chapter. So don't forget that. Sometimes you get hung up in getting the test done and not finishing up the chapter 4 homework. So that needs to be done by Sunday. I would get that done before the test so that you'll be ready to go. I saw where some of you had already done that. But it's under the graded assignments. It says test 1, and it is done through the same program that does your homework. So you should be familiar with the screen that comes up after that. Again, I will be out of town, but if you have problems with anything, don't hesitate to email me. I'll get back to you as quickly as I possibly can. Anybody have any questions about any of the logistics of the test or anything?
Is there any way, like, we start the test, like, once we get out of it, that's it?
That's it, yeah. You can't, if you start, you have 2 hours to finish and that's it.
Okay.
Can't try to print it or, you know, do half of it on one day and the other half the other day. What'll happen is the clock will just keep running, and at the end of 2 hours, it'll be done and over with a lot of unanswered questions. So set yourself some time where you're apart from everybody, where, you know, no screaming brothers or sisters or babies or, you know, don't have a party to rush to or anything like that.
How many questions is it?
I think I told y'all 50, is that right? I think it's 50 multiple choice questions.
Okay.
Okay, one answer for each question. No multiple answers or anything.
It's on chapters 1 through 4?
1 through 4. That's why you ought to get that chapter 4 homework done first, so you'll be up and ready to go with it. But chapter 4 should be fairly fresh in your mind since that's the one we just did. Okay, now I'm going to make this also very clear. Anything after midnight Sunday, not accepted, period. You got plenty of time to do it. Okay, so I would not be waiting until Sunday afternoon, because that might be when your world falls apart or something. Get it done and get it over with. And then you can play the rest of the week. Or take other tests, as I am told that there are tests in a lot of other classes this week too. So, any other questions about anything?
No, man.
All right. Y'all have a good rest of the week. Good luck on the test. I expect wonderful scores.